You're listening to Boomers Today with your host, Frank Sampson.
Well, welcome to Boomers Today. I'm your host, Frank Sampson, and of course, each week we bring you important and useful information on issues facing baby boomers, their parents, and other loved ones. And I just so much want to thank everybody for all their support. Our listeners are growing each and every day, and it's probably because we have such great guests on our show, and we have another one with you today. But I just want to remind everybody that there's a lot of ways to listen to our show. Certainly at our website, boomerstodayradio.com. But I think most of you just go on your phone and you could download our free app, the Boomers Today app, or you can listen on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, all the different ones, iHeartRadio, etc. So thank you so much for sharing this with people, and I really appreciate it. That's what we're trying to do here, is to really educate people. I'm just so excited about today's show. We had scheduled Zarella some time ago, and things didn't work out, but I'm thrilled to have her on the show now. We have with us today, she's Mexican-born, Zarela Martinez, who rewrote the story of Mexican cuisine in the United States when she opened her game-changing New York restaurant, Zarella, in 1987. This legendary dining spot replaced culinary stereotypes with brilliant, fearless explorations of regional Mexican specialties embedded in their own distinctive contexts. Zarella is the author of Food from My Heart, The Food and Life of Oaxaca, and Zarella's Veracruz, which was also the companion to a 13-part PBS television series. In 2013, she was inducted into the James Beard Foundation Who's Who of Food and Beverage in America. In the same year, Harvard Radcliffe's Schlesinger Library acquired her unpublished papers, an invaluable documentation of a lifetime dedicated to enlightening food lovers everywhere about Mexican cuisine and culture. Together with her son, prize-winning chef Aaron Sanchez, she is now conducting a podcast series herself for Heritage Radio Network titled Cooking in Mexican from A to Z, meant to introduce cooks to this brilliant spectrum of key Mexican ingredients. Zarella was diagnosed with Parkinson's about a decade ago, and we're going to talk to her about how she's dealing with the disease and its effect on her life. So, Zarella, I just so much want to thank you for joining us on Boomers Today. Really appreciate it.
Well, it's a great opportunity for me to be able to tell my story of how to live well with this devastating disease. And I've actually have been diagnosed since 2004, I guess.
Oh, so I had the numbers wrong. So it's been a lot longer.
No problem.
Yeah.
But I've actually had it since '87.
Wow.
So it's really amazing that I was able to do my entire career on Parkinson's, and that I've been able to continue being productive and having a fulfilling career and everything. And that's what I'm so happy to have this opportunity.
Yeah. So in case people don't know this, and these numbers may even be higher than today, there's an estimated 1 million people in the U.S. living with Parkinson's and more than 10 million people worldwide. And as you said about your career, though we're mainly going to be talking about your experience in managing Parkinson's disease, I just want to first congratulate you on such a wonderful career. And after all you have accomplished, it must be a wonderful working with your son on this podcast. So maybe before we get into the whole Parkinson's and how you're dealing with this, tell us about the podcast a little bit.
Well, when after the restaurant closed, I kept on telling my son, I have to do something. I have to remain relevant. It was just very important to me. So I came up with this idea of doing a podcast on ingredients. And I got Heritage Radio Network to do it. And it's been really, really successful. It's Listen Notes named it in the top 5% in popularity in among more than 1.8 million shows globally.
And so they can find this. It's called Cooking in Mexican from A to Z. That's the name of it.
Yes,
Okay,
it's really
great.
fun because we dedicate each program to one ingredient, and we have experts, and it's been really, really interesting
Well,
and a privilege.
Mexican is one of my favorite cuisines, so I'm going to start listening to it for sure. So thank you for that. So I have to ask you, going back when you were first diagnosed with Parkinson's, what was your reaction back then, and what's your overall feeling now?
But when I first got diagnosed, I called Oliver Sacks, who was a very close friend of mine, the famous neurologist, and I told him, and he ran to my house and showed me visibly what was going to happen to me. The stooped, posture, the dragging feet, all this kind of stuff. And I said, no, it isn't. I'm going to kick the shit. And I haven't kicked it, but I've learned how to manage it very well. And there are 3 things that you absolutely have to do to control Parkinson's. One of them is exercise, which is the most important thing of all, to remain flexible and all that. And that's been the greatest challenge in COVID because I can't really leave my house. Right. And I live in a small apartment, and it's hard to exercise the way that I need to. Secondly, you have to socialize. Another thing that you can't do in COVID. And then third, you have to be creative, and that is no problem. Because I cook every day and involved in some projects and decorate jackets, and I do all sorts of creative stuff.
So what kind? I know we're talking right now. People might be listening to this interview in the months and years to come, and hopefully COVID will be a thing in the past and in the very near future. But before COVID, what type of exercise did you do, or do you still
before
do?
COVID?
Yeah,
water aerobics.
Water aerobics, great.
So now I can't walk.
Yeah.
It's a real problem. A real problem. I'm having a lot of problems with freezing, with where you freeze all of a sudden in the middle of a street. Mm-hmm. It's frightening. You can't get into an elevator without kind of freaking or round the bends or go through narrow spaces. It's very, very challenging.
Hmm. So, knowing what you know now, going back years ago, is there anything you would have done differently in managing Parkinson's? Do you ever say to yourself, boy, if I would have known this, how many years ago, I would have done things a little differently? Is there anything?
No, on the contrary. I was doing everything that I had to do.
Right.
When I first started, was when I was about opening the restaurant, and it started with an anxiety attack, which is very, very common with Parkinson's.
Right.
But I had just moved to New York a few years before. I was exercising regularly, doing yoga. I was setting up the restaurant, so I was being incredibly creative. And at the same time, I was socializing constantly because of the restaurant.
Right. So I know actually friends and family that have Parkinson's, and what I have learned is that everybody's situations with Parkinson's is quite different.
Yes, it's a very individualistic disease.
Yeah. So tell us about some of the symptoms that are common with Parkinson's that you can share with our listeners, and tell us about if you have any of those symptoms or you don't.
Well, I don't have major tremor.
Right.
My main problem is dyskinesia. Let's say like right now, because I'm excited, I get dyskinetic. So that means a lot of uncontrolled movements. and it's a problem. I'm trying to learn how to handle that. And let's see what the main problem is the walking, because it's scary, and it's made me a prisoner of my beautiful apartment, with a great view. But it's still, it's I have that. Let's see what else I have. I have a lot of trouble sleeping, which is common. I get very hot. When I have an off period, I start perspiring uncontrollably, and it's very, very stressful. But that's about it.
So
it's not that bad.
Yeah. So you had shared some information with me before, and one of the symptoms you wrote to me, which said was your main symptom, and maybe you could explain a little more. Rigidity.
My what?
Rigidity. You said that was kind of a main symptom. So tell us what you mean by that.
Well, like for instance, you might be sitting down, and all of a sudden you get this horrible spasm and knots in your calves and in your legs.
Right.
I mean, and extremely painful, and it's very hard to move. Like the other thing is your neck becomes really tight. I mean, this is not a fun disease. Let me put it that way.
Right.
It's a painful disease that people don't associate pain with Parkinson.
Right.
So
right.
But you have to, this is like, you have to have a lot of will. I believe firmly that you choose the way you feel, and I choose to feel good.
Yeah, it's a lot of that. You have to have that positive attitude, right?
Yeah, because of all the diseases, Parkinson's has the greatest degree of depression, more than cancer, more than anything.
So, how did you best educate yourself, aside from just
learning
as you go? I mean, what did you? Any particular groups or associations, or how did you educate yourself on the disease?
Well, I was a medical social worker for a while, for like 9 years before I became a food personality. I just started reading everything about it that I could.
Right. Did you go to any local groups of small groups, or maybe others that have it as well, and share?
No.
Other? You haven't done that. Okay. All right. Great.
No.
And I got to believe you have a good support system around you. Your son and.
I have a friend who does everything for me.
Yeah.
My friend Barbara, who's wonderful.
Right.
I mean, she'll even go exchange shoes for me, if you can imagine.
Right.
She goes to the market for me, that kind of stuff. But I live alone and want to live alone.
Well, it's
because,
good.
Because I spend a lot of time by myself. I work in my head. I'm working on a lot of different projects. So
Right.
I work in my head, and I like to be silent. That's the other thing. It's hard to talk. So I take singing lessons, and
That's great.
I recorded an album, and
Wonderful.
I'm working on another album.
What kind of album? What kind of album?
One of them is called Sad Songs from a Happy Heart, and they're songs that I used to sing with my mom. It's really well produced, and it's on Spotify. And then, and now I'm working on another one with another style.
Right.
I sing pretty well.
That's wonderful. So we're going to take a real quick break here. I'm going to give you a rest for about 30 seconds, okay? And we're going to recognize our sponsor, and then we're going to come back and continue our discussion and share with people maybe how they could learn more from you, okay? So we'll be right back. I just want to remind everybody, today's show is sponsored by Senior Care Authority, an elder care consulting organization that has a national network of professionally trained and experienced local advisors to assist families in determining the right path for your loved ones. They'll discuss various long-term care options, whether it's in-home care, assisted living, memory care, or if you just need an advocate to get advice from, a local Senior Care Authority advisor can help you now. So for a free 30-minute consultation with an advisor in your area, contact Senior Care Authority at 888-809-1231, or you could go directly to their website at www.seniorcareauthority.com, and you can find an advisor in your area. We're back with Zarela Martinez, who rewrote the story of Mexican cuisine in the U.S. And we're also, talking to Zarela, of course, about her challenges and how she's managing Parkinson's. She's doing, and I know it's tough, but she's doing an amazing job. So what advice would you have, Zarela, to families who are listening to this, family members who are listening to this, who either have been recently diagnosed or they have a loved one who's been recently diagnosed with Parkinson's? Any recommendations you have to them?
Well, the number one thing is that you don't give up. Because a lot of people, that's the first reaction that they have. They don't want to do anything. They just sit down and shrivel. There are a lot of options. There are a lot of therapies. There's stuff like you can go boxing, tango dancing, singing. Do fun things that are fun for you, but that are at the same time therapeutic, and that are socially minded. Which right now is hard to do because of COVID, but there's still enough things that you can do. And I think that you have to become, see some of the webinars in the Parkinson's Foundation, which are fantastic. And, get involved in the support group if that's good for you. That's not good for me, but it's very good for a lot of people, to talk about it, because people don't understand how you feel and they get very exasperated. People who, your family or friends sometimes get exasperated.
So you mentioned something I gotta ask you about. When you were giving, rattling off some different things to do. You talked about the swimming and all that. You said boxing. Talk to me about have you taken up boxing?
Yes, there's one organization that I'm very fond of. It's called Stop PD, and they're wonderful. See, because you use every part of your body. Your crossing motions are very important neurologically. Because you're balancing when you're standing up, and you're changing. You're changing movements, which are very important to keep your agility, your mental agility. So boxing, and it's fun.
Yeah. Did your boxing instructor, or ever work with anybody with Parkinson's before?
Oh yes, he has an organization. It's called Stop PD, and they have theater groups and plays. It's a really wonderful organization, very personal.
Yeah, and that's wonderful.
And like for instance, this is known, so I don't have to say anything. But Leslie Stahl's husband belongs to the group. He wrote Urban Cowboy.
Right. Oh, that's great. So I know you've been on, national TV shows all the time. You're talking about this in your career. Anything coming up that you can tell us about at all?
Well, I have something big coming up, but I can't tell you.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll have you back and you'll tell us more about it when you can. Yeah.
I'm doing a series of webinars on how to cook with Parkinson's, and also how to live well with Parkinson's.
So how can people learn about that? Is there a way?
You're going to learn about it. It's going to launch in February.
Okay. And
but I can't say anything about it.
Okay, great. But I'm sure you're going to probably talk about it on your website or your Facebook, right? Will you talk about it? Okay. So how do people connect with you? Tell us that.
They can just email me at zarela@zarela.com. That's Z like zebra, ARELA.com. Zarela@zarela.com. I answer all my emails.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's great. And I know you're on Facebook and on LinkedIn, and you're very active in social media. You're very active.
Yes, I'm learning.
So what you've accomplished so many things in the area, of Mexican cuisine. what stands out to you the most? What are you most proud of?
Well, two things. Like in 2004, the Department of State wrote a piece or a study on trendsetters, and they named me one of 7 people that changed the way Americans eat, and that made me very proud. But my proudest moment is that Harvard bought my papers for the Schlesinger Library. All my papers, research, personal, everything, and it's at the Schlesinger Library.
That's fantastic.
I always wanted to leave a legacy.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So how often are you doing the podcast with your son, Aaron?
It comes out every Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're about to finish the first season. We have 3 left or 4. And so we get together and do them. And they're a lot of fun because they're, you just sit there and talk for 40 minutes about tomatoes. And you think, what can you talk about tomatoes this long? Yeah, but it's just fascinating because the experts are exceptional. We did one on vanilla, one on corn, one on squashes. I mean, you'd be amazed at how interesting they are.
All right. And your son, it appears though he's carried on your legacy in Mexican cuisine. Is that right? That's his area. That's his specialty as well. We lose you?
I'm very proud of him. He's a very good businessman.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a good son too. And I have another son who's a lawyer, and he's wonderful. His twin brother.
Might have lost you. Are you there, Zarella?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, great.
He has a twin brother who's a lawyer and a wonderful man.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's wonderful. Great to hear. So, I know, as I say, people might be listening to this when COVID is over. All right. They'll probably be listening to this podcast for months to come. What's your plan once we're all vaccinated and you can go out and have some form of normalcy? What are you going to be doing?
Entertaining.
I
love to entertain. I love to have a good conversation. I love to have people over. That's the thing that I miss the most. And I mean, that's what I'll be doing from the beginning. You know what I really suggest to people who are changing their life, and Parkinson's does make you change your life in a way, is to find something that you're passionate about. Something that you can't live without doing, and concentrate on that. Do research or try to do it, because that way you'll be satisfied in doing something that's thrilling. You know what I'm saying? Because you have to keep your interest up.
So, because you're a well-known chef, and you obviously love, that's part of your passion, I'm sure, is cooking and Mexican cuisine. So tell us, for those that are listening, that how has Parkinson's affected that passion of yours? Has it had an effect?
Well, I've developed a system of cooking because it's sometimes you don't feel like it, or you're having trouble chopping, that kind of stuff, creating things. I've developed a system of building blocks. For instance, I have, like, let's say I make a salsa, a pico de gallo. I use that salsa to make a bunch of dishes as a basis. I saute it and add vegetables to it, or saute it and cook fish in it to make my snapper hash, or I saute it and add eggs to it and crispy pieces of tortilla. And so I have other things like chipotle paste and tomatillo, flavors that are easy to use and adaptable to many other ingredients like protein or vegetables or sandwiches and that kind of stuff. So that's how it has affected me. That I'm doing a lot of building blocks, let's say, to make things easier. And that's one of the things I'll be covering in my new series, which you will hear about.
Great. Well, we're all excited to hear more about it. Absolutely. So great. This has just been wonderful. Anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners that maybe I haven't asked you?
Well, I don't know. You've been a very good interview.
Oh, good. Well, so, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
it's kind of my second job.
Yeah, exactly. It's fun. I mean, it's fun to interview people.
Yeah. Well, I think that you it was wonderful, everything that you shared. But maybe you could just share again in case people didn't write it down. If they wanted to learn more, to go to your website and maybe your email address, maybe you could share that again.
Yes, the website is www. Hold on.
Okay.
That's my alarm for my medicine. That is a very important thing.
Okay, well, we're going to get off, so I want you to take your medicine, so we're going to get off. But to go ahead and share the website, and then we'll call it a day.
www.zarela.com, and the email zarela@zarela.com. And great. I promise to answer.
Great. Zarella.
And take your medicines on time.
All right, Zarella, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Boomers today. You're wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for joining us on Boomers Today. Please be safe, and we'll talk to everybody real soon.
You've been listening to Boomers Today with Frank Sampson. To learn more about today's show, visit boomerstodayradio.com and join us next time for another edition of Boomers Today.